our world-renowned speaker is about to begin. Before he begins, I just wanted to say I just came back from a BaOmer, if you want to call it a party, I don't know, Kehila, with about 500 people there. And I was one of the founders of that place. It's a night Seder program. And it used to be in a guy's dining room, and then it traveled into his kitchen. I was learning in his kitchen. Some guys were learning in his living room. And then he built a base medrash. And then he started this little barbecue. Maybe 50 people came, 30 people, 50 people, something around there. And slowly but surely it grew and grew. Today, it's one of their biggest fundraisers that everybody buys a raffle ticket. They put $100, they buy a raffle ticket. They raise like $50,000. And it basically covers half the budget of the night Seder program I belong to. And on my way back, I was like, I was a little bit nervous. This is our first time, our first year. And like 6 years ago, when we started only with 20, 30 people, this year, Hashem, this is our second year here in Jackson, New Jersey. We started off with 3 families. B'li Ayin Hara, we've grown to, hopefully, by the end of the summer, we'll be 15 families. That's our goal. And slowly but surely, Chavda Islay, we tell our friends how yummy the food was. This year was chicken. Next year, Bezrat Hashem, will be tongue or lamb. And you tell your friends how amazing people come. They come for the food, they come for the schnapps, or it's, whatever. They come to hear a speech. They come to get inspired. They come to hear me. So you tell your friends, you encourage them to come, and you bring one guy, he'll bring another guy, and as they say, in the Gemara, that it will spiral and snowball into a humongous thing. Bezrat Hashem, in 6-7 years, we will be 500 people, and we will be raising many more than $50,000. Bezrat Hashem for a building and to help people come and buy houses. Bezrat Hashem. I'd like to thank Rabbi Moshe Suisa for putting this all together. It was his idea. He got one of his. And of course, Rabbi Oman, who doesn't stop tirelessly every single time. And as they say in Morocco, blood bless to all those who didn't come. We're not going to start mentioning them, but we still have a few families that either they're not here during the week, or they are busy in other places, at work, or whatever it is, that they didn't come. So, but a big Yasher Koyach to Moshe Chaim, who came up with the idea that so we're going to do something, and he put his words, he put his actions where he spoke, and Baruch Hashem, he got one of his Rabbi, who is world renowned. If you go on YouTube and watch his YouTube, you see that he has over 10,000 hits on his Shiurim, to come and to give us a Shiur. It gives us a lot of credibility that we have such a chashuv rabbi coming and give us a Shiur. So his Talmud Rav Moshe would like to get up and to introduce our rabbi.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Raphael. I'm not going to be giving you a long introduction. I just want to thank somebody who forgot to thank himself. It's Raphael, who's lending us his house and who actually puts... He's hosting everything, he's cooking for us all the time, and believe it or not, Raphael cooked this entire meal by himself. Wow. So we really want to thank him for that. And as you know, we've all heard stories, we've all seen Hilulot of BaOmer by our grandparents, by the previous generations, and BaOmer was always a very big Hilula, where we connect with the Tzaddik Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. My grandfather used to do a Siyum Zohar and every BaOmer, and people in Morocco connected very much with him. Without further ado, Rabbi Kessin, please. We'd like to honor you not to start speaking.
Tonight is BaOmer, and of course, it's after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Who was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, really? It's an interesting story. The story is brought down, I think, in the Shifrei Ari by Rabbi Chaim Betal. And the story goes as follows. That the Ari was learning with his... does everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. If you don't hear me, you want to move up? Don't be afraid, I don't bite. Oh, that makes it much better. The story goes that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the Ari was learning with somebody, a Talmud, on Shabbos, and as they were learning, the Ari dropped his head, and it looked like he was sleeping. And the Talmud didn't know what to do. He just looked at the Ari and didn't do anything. And the Ari started mumbling. So the Talmud wanted to hear, what is the Ari mumbling about? He's obviously sleeping and he's mumbling. So the Talmud put his ear next to the mouth of the Ari to try to understand or hear what the mumblings were about. And all of a sudden the Ari got up. And the Talmud is, of course, frightened. He woke up his Rebbe. And the Ari was nobody to fool around with. In any case, see, the Ari saw that and he said, no, it's okay, don't worry. So once the Ari said, okay, it's okay, so the Talmud felt better. And he figured he's going to be brave. And he asked the Ari, what were you mumbling about? What was that? So the Ari said, first of all, I did not go to sleep. What happened is we were learning, and I was mechaven. It means that I intended on Hashem, and I was oile l'mayla. It's even though my body's here, I was able to ascend higher into a different world. It's oilam yetzira, whatever. And I was approached by a malach, and he asked me, "What would you like? Whose shiur would you like to go to?" So the Ari said, whose shiur? Who's giving a shiur on what topic? So he mentioned different tanoim, different topics, and he mentioned Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, he's giving a shiur Parshas Bolok. So the Ari said, I want to go to that shiur. So the malach took him to the shiur of Rabbi Shimon. And he listened to the shiur, whatever, and he woke up. So the Talmud was fascinated. He said, you listened to a shiur by Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai on Parshas Bolok? What did he say? Like, what type of a Torah is it in Shemayim? That's what he wanted to know. Because here was a tremendous opportunity to find out. See, the Ari told him something incredible. He said, if I had 80 years to write down what I heard from Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, okay, or rather, if I had to write down what I heard from Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, it would take me 80 years to write it down. So how can I tell you what Rabbi Shimon said? What do we see from that? It tells us many things. One of them, it says, what was the command of the Sisrei Torah that Rabbi Shimon had? It was awesome. That's the first thing. The second thing is, look, if you take a look at Parshas Bolok and you write out all the Meforshim, right? Everything that was ever said on Parshas Bolok, it would take you 80 years to write down, right? Take you a couple of weeks. The Ramban, the Raj, and so on, the Rashi, all the Meforshim, right? The Rechaim and so on, right? It doesn't take you 80 years to write down the Perushim on Parshas Bolok. So what did the Ari mean? What the Ari was saying is a very important concept, which most people don't realize. The Torah has a depth vertically down of which we cannot fathom. We cannot understand really the amount of Torah that there is. Imagine in Parshas Bolok itself, he could write down what it would take him 80 years to write down on that one parsha in the Torah. Could you imagine how much Torah there is in general? So this is where we get the feeling of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, what he was oisik in. He was oisik in what's called the Sisrei Torah. What I want to do is try to explain a very important question. Why does everybody go to Rabbi Shimon? I mean, there's probably 500,000 people there now, right? That's what they say, 500,000 people. There are two people that the Olam, the Jewish people, go to en masse. The first is Reb Shimon, right? 500,000 people there. And the other person is Rochel Imenu, Kever Rochel, right? Her Yortzeit, Yud Aleph Cheshvan. You have also tens of thousands of people go to Rochel Imenu. You don't find by anybody else that they go en masse like this. You know, how come they go to, Morris Machpelah, but not like this, you see? So the question we have to ask is why? Why do so many people go to Reb Shimon? Why do so many people go to Rochel Imenu? What is it that people, even if they don't know, it says that Klal Yisrael are Nevi'im, even though they're not Nevi'im, they're B'nai Nevi'im. Even if we're not Nevi'im, that ended a long time ago, but we are descendants of Nevi'im. And therefore, a Jew has an unusual property. He can somehow intuit, as they say in English, the right way, what the right derech of Kedusha is. It's intuitive. And by the way, from that, you have tremendous amount of minhagim. That's where they come from. Because different communities feel different ways to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. You see, it's an intuitive idea. And therefore, it's based in tremendous Kedusha, and that is why Minig Yisrael Kedin. Why would it be Kedin? Because a Minig isn't a regular, it's not a Minig. A Minig is what Klal Yisrael can intuit. They intuitively feel that we should do this, except it's community-based. That's the only difference, you see. You have Sfardim, you have the Moroccans, Ashkenazim, Yekis, Germans, everybody's got their own minhagim because they intuitively feel, in many ways based on their Sherish and Shama, of what the right way to serve God. In any case. So that's that's the question I seek to answer. What is it about Lag BaOmer, right? And the Rochel Imenu's Yortzeit, where tens of thousands of people go? That's what I want to try to answer. In order to understand this, you have to have some background information. To really appreciate what Lag BaOmer is, you need to have some background information. So I'm going to give you that. Okay? So bear with me. It's interesting. The information that will form the framework in many ways of understanding Lag BaOmer and why so many people go there. Why did the Rebbeinu Shem create the Bria? Why does he create everything? The answer to that, Ramchal says, it's in the Torah, is what's called lahativ. The Rebbeinu Shem created everything to bestow an infinite state of goodness on a human being. That's what he did. Why does he want to do that? It's unknown. We don't know why the Rebbeinu Shem wants to bestow an infinite state of goodness on a human being. We don't know the motive of the motive, but that's what he wants to do. What is that incredible state of goodness that the Rebbeinu Shem wants to give a person? And the answer to that, the perfect or the greatest state of all, is called dveikus. In other words, it's where you are attached or you bond with God Himself. That is the greatest of all pleasures. It is the greatest state of being that you could ever experience. We don't know what that is. That's the state that you get to experience in Olam Haba. But that's what it is. But the Rebbeinu Shem has to make a decision. Will He give you this attachment to Him for free, or do you have to work? And the answer to that is that you obviously have to work. And therefore that necessitates creating an Olam Hazeh and then an Olam Haba. That's the concept that you have to earn. It's not a gift, it's a reward. And each of these ideas you can develop. But therefore we are now stuck in a situation where in order to get this attachment, dveikus, we need to work. The question is, what's the job? And the answer to that is, the Rebbeinu Shem creates a job. What is that? It's an interesting concept. He says, if the reward is that you are attached to me, so guess what? I'm going to make that the job. I will conceal myself. That's called hester. And to the extent that you find me, you see, to that extent you will experience me. Midah keneged midah, measure for measure. It's really a very simple formula. You get what you earned, what you deserve. You see? Since what you will deserve, what the reward is an attachment to me, and therefore you need to find me, and you get exactly to the percentage of what you, the amount that you seek is the amount that you get. It's a midah keneged midah formula. Fine. So therefore, the state of creation is created in a state called Hester, where the BaOmer is concealed, and the state in which things would be what's called rectified or remedied is called Giloi. It's really called Tikkun. What Tikkun means is rectification, repair, restore. What it really means it's to restore creation the way you once was, where the BaOmer was completely manifest throughout the Bria. Anyway, that's the basic framework of structure. How do we do that? How do we repair the deficiency in creation, which is a concealment of the divine presence? And the answer to that is that there are three ways. The first way is called mitzvahs. Without going into how and why, the mitzvahs is a vehicle, it's an instrument where you can do the tikkun. So that's called a tikkun device, is a mitzvah. Second idea, what happens if people don't do mitzvahs? So the BaOmer created a secondary way, which is called tshuva. If you sin, you are able to repent, okay? And as a result of the repentance of tshuva, you can also do the tikkun. But what happens if you don't do tshuva? So the third way is called yisurin, or suffering. Suffering in itself, it's not that it's a punishment. What it really is, in many ways, it's another device how you could do the tikkun process. And therefore, all three, mitzvahs, tshuva, and yisurin, they are called tikkun devices. This is the basic plan. I mean, you can elaborate, obviously, on and on, but this is the basic plan. You know, there's a job. It's to bring the BaOmer to discover him. And by the way, when you discover the BaOmer, ultimately he comes back into the Bria. That's what he does. And of course, the one who brings him back is the Mashiach. The concept of a messianic era is a concept that the world has reached its tikkun, and the BaOmer comes back. That's the process. Okay. But how does it work? How does the BaOmer do that? What he does is very interesting. He creates what's called certain emanations or certain forces. These forces are called in Kabbalah spheres. A sphere we don't know the nature of it, obviously, but it's a tremendous divine energy. It's a divine force, and there are 10 of them, and they create reality. The spheres create realities, so they create different realities. But the interesting thing about that is that they diminish their output of kedusha. Okay, so they start with the highest level of kedusha, and then that's their output, and then they create Olam Haba. Olam Haba was the first thing created. Then what they do is they diminish their output of kedusha, and there's a degradation of reality until you get to finally the lowest output of the spheres. It creates a physical universe called this world. Therefore, the physical universe, which is purely material, okay, is a result of the output of these spheres in its lowest form. Why does the BaOmer do that? Because he wants to take the neshama, which is a spiritual being, which automatically would experience the BaOmer. What he does is he puts it into a physical body, and because that neshama is in a physical universe, it cannot experience the spiritual. Therefore, the physical body or the physical universe is basically a barrier to experiencing ruchnius. That's how the BaOmer stops us from experiencing the entire spiritual universe. That's the purpose of the physical universe. So the question is, wait a minute, if the neshama is now encased in a physical body, how will it experience the spiritual? And the answer to that is very interesting. And that's what a tikkun device does. What the neshama has to do, which it ultimately does, is to retransform the physical universe back into a spiritual, which it was originally. It's called to dematerialize matter. That's what it does. The Hebrew term is called zikoch. It's mezakech the bria. It removes the physicality, and as a result of that, the physical universe now what's called reverses itself to a higher level of spirituality. Again, it does that again and again, and the physical universe reverses itself or retransforms itself over and over again until the physical universe itself becomes so dematerialized that it becomes Olam Haba. That's right. You wonder where Olam Haba is, right? Is it up there, down here? Where is it? And the answer is, it's here. This is Olam Haba, but it's completely physical. And what the neshama has to do is so mezakech the bria, it has to so purify the material substance that this world turns into Olam Haba. That's the plan. It's interesting. It's a retransformation of a physical universe, and therefore, obviously, right, there's no more barrier, right? Once you remove the physicality of the universe through a process called zikuch, which is to purify the material, remove it, transform it back into its spiritual matter, then there's no more barrier. How do you do that? Because in order to do that, what's the whole reason why there is a physical universe? And the answer is because the spheres diminish their output. So what these three things do is they increase the intensity of the spheres, and therefore the spheres now have an incredible amount of illumination, and therefore the physical universe changes back into a ruchni. See, that's basically how it works. That's a very important idea, and that's what a mitzvah does. If somebody ever asks you, what is the tachlis, or the purpose of Judaism, what would you answer? To do mitzvahs? Of course not. Because the real tachlis of Judaism is to purify the physical universe. The way it happens is through a mitzvah. You see, a mitzvah is an instrument, it's a tool that does it. And therefore the real purpose of Judaism is called tikkun, to rectify creation, to change it back into what it was. That's the whole game plan. Of course, it's far more than that, but that's the fundamental understanding of what has to happen. Now, what is this ruchni? You know, the Mashiach comes, right? What does he do? People think that he's a political individual, right? He frees the Jews, right? And now all of a sudden, we can all go to Eretz Yisrael or whatever, right? It's a whole different place. The Jews are now free. They're no longer persecuted. Everything is great. That's not what the Mashiach does. That's a tremendous mistake that people make. It's not a matter of liberty that the Mashiach does. What he does is he removes the disease of mankind. What is the disease of mankind? And the answer is ignorance. We don't see reality, really. It's like a fog. We're walking around in a fog. And every once in a while, a little piece of the fog clears, you see? But basically, we live in a fog universe. We don't see the ruchnius, the reality which is beyond this world. So what the Mashiach does, right, is he clears the fog. And all of a sudden, we see a reality of which is incomprehensible. And this is the last tekuf of Olam Hazeh. I'm not even talking about Olam Haba. What type of reality is that? I'll tell you what the Medrash Rabbah says. The Medrash Rabbah says, in the end of Kehila, the following. How great is the Torah of the Mashiach, which is the Messianic light? That's the Or Mashiach. What is that? How great is it? So the Medrash says something which is, for us, it's almost incomprehensible. The Medrash says that the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, what's the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Shas, Bavli, Yerushalmi, Shulchan Aruch. It's the hundreds of thousands of svarim, right, that have been written over the thousands of years of Judaism. That's Torah's Moshe. So the Medrash says that the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu is hevel, luft, air, compared to the Torah of the Mashiach. It's astounding. We cannot even understand the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? How can we understand that this is hevel, it's insignificant, it's nothing compared to the Mashiach's Torah? that he will reveal at the end of time, not Olam Haba. We are talking about the last Tekufa, the last period of time of Olam Hazeh, which is very shortly down the road. You see, what is that called? That type of look, perspective of creation, that type of understanding is the Or Mashiach. But now you begin to get a feel of how vast it is. That's what the pasuk in the Navi says, Ki mol oretz dea, that the world will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters covers the seabed. And what does that mean? That means the appearance, or rather the presence of the Hashem will be as obvious to you as imagine walking in daylight with no clouds, a full sun, right? How obvious is it to you that the sun is shining? It's all over. In the Messianic era, with this type of awe, the presence of the Hashem will be so vast that you cannot even comprehend what that means. And the Giloi, the revelation of that presence, is the Or Mashiach, you see. And therefore, the product or the consequence of that revelation of God is Torah's Mashiach, of which we cannot even comprehend. And now you understand what the Ari saw. 80 years to write a Parshas Balak. What is that supposed to mean? That Torah that he heard from the Rajbi, Rabbi Shimon Yochai, right? That was the Or Mashiach in Shemaim at that time. You see? And now the Ari was zoichet to hear what the Torah is going to sound like in the time of the Mashiach. That's a very important idea. You got to get away from this naive notion that we've got all the Torah and we've got everything. It's like an iceberg, where 9/10 of the iceberg is below the water. You got to stick your head under the water. You see, we have it's like a grain of sand, right? In the vast beaches of the world. That's all we have. But when the Mashiach comes, then all of this will be revealed. You see, and I want to tell you something. And the Medrash concludes. So the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu is hevel, is air, luft, nothing. It doesn't even have a substance connected the Torah of the Mashiach. And then the Medrash continues and says that the Torah of Mashiach is hevel compared to the Torah of Olam Haba. Could you believe what this means? It's almost like the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah of Mashiach is infinitely greater than the Torah of Moshe. And the Torah of Olam Haba is infinitely greater than the Torah of the Mashiach. We cannot even masig of what's ahead. This is called the Or Rishon. You see, what is the Or Rishon? I've just given you the concept of the orders of magnitude of the Or Rishon. But what is it? The answer to that is that there's a certain concept that God did. What is that? He created a certain phenomenon which he invests in the physical universe, and that's called period, separation. Yeah, everything is separate. You, the table, the house, right? Tom's River, Lakewood, Jackson, the planet, the galaxies, everything is separate, you see. But what the Or Mashiach reveals is the Achdus, is an unbelievable unification where everything is really one thing and all of it emanates from God. We cannot masig what that is, you see. But the key to understanding the Or Mashiach is called Yichud, it's Achdus. It's an absolute unity of everything which we see as separate. It is now one. We cannot masig what that is. That's the Or Rishon. The beginning of that Giloi is the Messianic light, is the Or Mashiach. And that beginning of that Achdus is so great, like I said, that the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is basically all period, is nothing compared to the Torah of the Mashiach. So this begins to give you what's called perspective, because that's what we need. We're dealing with orders of magnitude that we cannot even begin to assimilate, you see. Therefore, we now understand basically certain basics. And one of the important ideas is the Or Rishon. Do we have the Or Rishon today? Do we? Is it only in the time of Mashiach? We actually have some of the Or Rishon. Okay, what is the Or Rishon today? What is it today? Like I say, does it exist now? And the answer is yes. What is it? And the answer is Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah really? Kabbalah is nothing more than the study of the structure of the spiritual universes and how it connects to ours. It's basically a study of a meta reality, which is a reality beyond us. That's what it is. It talks about spheres, it talks about the union of spheres, partsufim, and so on, and it talks about how all of that evolves, and now that all of that produces the physical universe and our relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom through the mechanism of the spheres, or Kabbalah. That's really what it is. Kabbalah is called surface Or Rishon. You see, the Rebbeinu gave it to us as a tremendous chesed. In the end, however, what the Or Mashiach begins to reveal is the connection between this universe and another universe, which is called the spiritual universe. And therefore what we see is how everything in the physical universe emerges or emanates from the spiritual universe. And therefore there's no more period. You see? So therefore it unites everything: chemistry, physics, biology, all the chokhmas hateva, everything, together with all the mitzvahs, everything. It unites it under one framework called the Kabbalistic framework. That Rabbi Shimon was involved with. It's not that he was learning, he was involved with Kabbalah. He wrote the Zohar, right? Which is the fundamental primer or textbook of Kabbalah. So he says, he's one of the greatest Mekubalim. It's much more than that. He was Isaac in the Or Rishon that we have, which is called the surface of the Or Rishon. That's what he was involved with, you see. So we have a feeling of what's going on with this Or. Now, the BaOmer wants to bring the Mashiach, right? That's what he wants to do. So therefore, he now creates a man, a person, Adam Rishon. And his job is Zikuch, same concept. And he's given a mitzvah, right? Don't eat from that tree, correct? That mitzvah was the only mitzvah basically he needed, you see? Because the amount of presence of the Rebbeinu Shalom at time of Adam Rishon was something we cannot even comprehend. And therefore, all he had to do was mezakech a small little piece of whatever universe he occupied. Not much. You see? That's why he only had to have one mitzvah. He didn't need more. He had to mezakech a very small part of the barrier between him and the Rebbeinu Shalom. Had he done it, then he would have been Mashiach ben David. He would have been Mashiach. But since he failed, which he did, so therefore he had to give 70 years of his life to David HaMelech, because now you need a new Mashiach, because he failed. So the moment he failed, okay, so the next job, who was after Adam Rishon, the next people was Cain and Hevel. They took on the job of Tikkun. They failed, or rather, Hevel was killed, murdered, obviously, and Cain, of course, murdered him. So that was the next failure. But what the BaOmer wanted is that the 10 generations after Adam Rishon, they would be masakin the 10 spheres, all of them, and therefore the Or Rishon would have come down after 10 generations. This was the plan. Didn't come down. What happened? Instead of the Or Rishon coming down, which would have been the tikkun of mankind, right? It didn't come down, you see. Instead, what came down is something else. So again, in 10 generations, what the BaOmer wanted after Adam is that the Zikuch should occur and the Or Rishon should come down. That was the plan. But instead of doing the tikkun, which by the way mankind could do the tikkun in those days, it didn't come down. Instead, what came down was the reverse. Since they were so choitei, so the Or Rishon became physical. It became a physical analog, which is water, because Torah is nimshel l'mayim. So what happened is, as it said in the pasuk, the windows of heaven, right, the arus hashemayim and the tahoim poured forth water. What was this water supposed to be? This water was supposed to be the Orishan. Instead, it came down as water and destroyed everybody. The Mabul is the Orishan turned to water because of the terrible, destructive evil of mankind. Now you understand what the Mabul was. You see. And that's what it means. Since the Molor is there, this world would be filled with the knowledge of God, like the waters covers the seabed. Well, guess what? The waters came from the seabed, the Tahim, right? And it came from the Shemayim. And that water should have been the Orishan. Instead, it was water, and it destroyed the earth. This is the understanding, really, of what happened by the Mabul. You see. But remember, it should have been the Orishan. But it wasn't. Of course, at that point in time, the Rebbe Shem gave the next 10 generations the second chance to be masakin, to bring a tikkun to that or, okay? And after 10 generations after Noach, you had the Doha Floga. You see? You had the generation, of course, of what's called the dispersion, right? Where he spread mankind all over. So again, it failed to happen. As a result of that, the Rebbe Shem said, the only one doing my mitzvahs or believing in me is Avram Avinu. So what the Rebbe Shem did something which is spectacular. Until Avram Avinu, all mankind could do the tikkun. Everybody had the neshama of a Jew, except there was no such thing as a Jew. It was called mankind. All mankind could do the tikkun. So for 2,000 years, all mankind could do the tikkun. When they failed, however, ultimately, so the Rebbe Shem took away the ability to do tikkun, and he gave it from mankind, he gave it to Avram Avinu. So now the job of tikkun becomes a Jewish enterprise. It's no longer given to the Goyim. And therefore the concept of the Umas HaOlam, the 70 nations of the world, began basically from that time. Because now the job of tikkun was who? Was a Jewish job, and Avram's descendants, and he took it away from mankind, which is interesting. And that's why you understand the whole concept of a pasuk, right? V'nivruchu b'cho kol mishpachos v'adama. All the nations of the earth will be blessed to you. Why? Because you're the only one that can do the tikkun and change the world back into an incredible ruchnistic state. So therefore, all the nations of the world are dependent on you to do the tikkun. Getting back to Noach, you understand now what the Mabul is. The Mabul is nothing more than a change in the concept of the Orishan to a different analog, and it destroyed the world. When did the Mabul, when was it supposed to come down? The Mabul was supposed to come down when? On Yud Aleph Cheshvan, wasn't it? Yud Aleph. Except Mesushelach died, right? So the Rebbe Shem postponed the Mabul to Yud Ches, or Yud Zayin, right? Because he didn't want to interfere in the Avelis of Mesushelach, right? So it happened on Yud Ches, or Yud Zayin, Yud Ches, right? Right? But really it was supposed to happen on Yud Aleph, right? He wanted to do it then. Like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that Mesushelach died, he would have brought it then. So therefore we see something very interesting. That Yud Aleph Cheshvan is the real day that the Orishan came down, right? But it came down instead on a Mabul. But it was postponed to Yud Ches. So both Yud Aleph and Yud Ches are called propitious. These dates are very masugel for the Orishan. And the Orishan really is the Geula. It's really what it is. The effect of the Geula is the Orishan. That's what the Mashiach does. That's what redemption is. To remove the ignorance of mankind and to reveal entire universe, right? That's the disease, is we're all ignorant, and that's why everybody thinks he's God's gift to the planet. But it's when the Orishan is revealed, that's when everybody understands what's really going on. So therefore we have a very fundamental idea that the date of the Orishan is Yud Aleph Cheshvan or Yud Ches. Who died on Yud Aleph Cheshvan? Rachel Imenu. Isn't that interesting? She dies on the day which was Mesugel for the Orishan. You see. Why? Because Rachel Imenu is connected to the redemption. You all know the famous Medrash, right? When the Jews were captured by the Babylonians and they were dragging them off, they all passed by her kever on the way to Babylon, right? And all of a sudden, everybody began to pray from Rachel Imenu to save them. So the Medrash says, it's amazing, that everybody who's who, you know, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, everybody, Shmuel Novi, right? They were all trying to reverse the decree that the Jews should be in Golus for 70 years. And they all lost. The Banshim said no, because the din demanded Golus for good, because that's how much the Avodah Zarah was. But Rachel came up in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and she had a petition. What was her petition? She said, look, you know, my sister came over to me, right, and she was crying. I was the one who was going to marry Rachel. I was supposed to marry Yaakov, and Leah was supposed to marry Esav. But I said to Hashem, look, when Leah came over to me, I gave her the password. So therefore, when Yaakov Avinu inquired underneath the chuppah, and he said, what's the password? Because he knew that Lavan is going to switch me for Leah. So I gave what? I gave the password to Leah so that Yaakov Avinu should marry Leah first. But I was taking a tremendous chance, because Yaakov Avinu said, I don't believe this. You're part of the conspiracy. I'm not going to marry you anymore. So I put my whole self in jeopardy that I would never be a matriarch, an Aim B'Yisrael, because of the rachmanas that I had for my sister. So therefore, I'm asking you, Mida Keneged Mida. Forget about the din. You're right. Al Pi Din, they don't deserve to have a geula at all. But Mida Keneged Mida, just like I was merachim on my sister, you be merachim on the Jews, even if it's Keneged the din. And she won, because she didn't come with a tain of din, she came with a tain of rachmim, which she did, and she jeopardized her whole status as an aim, as a mother in Israel. So the Baruch Shem said, fine. What do we see? So she reversed the decree of Golus to 70 years. She is responsible for the Geula. You see? So she dies at the time of the Geula, which is the Orishim, Yud al Cheshvan, because she now becomes a symbol of redemption. You see? Klal Yisrael feels that, even though they don't know it consciously, that Rachel Imenu is part of the redemption itself. It is Haschus, as it says in the Novi, Rachel Mavako al Boneo, and the Baruch Shem says, hold your tears back. Klal Yisrael knows that she is the, as they say, Mama Rachel. She is the one that's going to be Gol Yisrael. She's Mamash Ta'atzchus, is the Gul itself, and therefore, as a result of that, she dies on Yud Av Cheshvan, and Klal Yisrael knows that. You see. Now, I mentioned that's why Klal Yisrael goes to Rachel. What about Rab Shimon? Well, think about this. There's a machlokes in the Gemara, right? When the Baruch created the world. So Rabbi Eliezer says that he created the world in Tishrei, right? And Rabbi Yeshua says he created in Nisan, right? Now the Mabul happened, right, in the second month, 18 days later. If you think about that, what is the second month, 18th day? What is the 18th month of the second, the 8th of the second month from Nisan? It's like BaOmer, isn't it? Isn't that interesting? Why? According to Rabbi Yeshua, the Mabul happened when? In Lag BaOmer, not like Rabbi Eliezer. Because according to him, the Torah says that the Mabul happened when? On the 18th day, right, of the second month. But according to Rabbi Yeshua, that's Iyar, isn't it? It's like BaOmer. Isn't that incredible? And Rab Shimon died on Lag BaOmer. So according to him, the Gula really is what? The Mabul happened on Yud Ches, in Iyar, Lag BaOmer, right? And therefore, Rab Shimon died on that day. Why? Because he revealed the real beginning of the Zohar, which is the Or Mashiach, surface. You see? They both are connected to the Gula. In fact, Rab Shimon was so great that in his day there was never a rainbow. Why? Because there was no fear of a mabul. He was able to remove. In other words, if there's no fear of a mabul, what do you need a rainbow for? Because that's what's supposed to remind the Rabbi, so to speak, not to bring a mabul. But Reb Shimon was masakin that, and therefore there was no need, there was no fear there would be a mabul, right? Therefore you don't need a rainbow. See, so Reb Shimon actually did the tikkun, you see, of Geula, which is the Kabbalah surface or Mashiach. And therefore he dies in like BaOmer, because he also is connected to the Geula itself. You see, Klal Yisrael does what? They recognize intuitively that Rab Shimon is also part of the Geula, and that's why you have 500,000 people going to Rab Shimon, which is incredible. So when you begin to look at it, it's very interesting. On Yud Aleph Cheshvan you have Rochel Imenu. And Yud Aleph Cheshvan, according to Rabbi Eliezer, was the time of the Mabul, and that's when the Orishan, the Messianic light, was supposed to come down. Instead, it became water, which is the analog of the Orishan. So she dies on that day to indicate that she's a factor. She's part of the redemption. Rabbi Shimon did the same thing, except he worked on the Orishan, which is the Kabbalah, and to show you that he was masakin that. And that's why there was no rainbow, you see. As a result of that, he dies on Lag BaOmer, which according to Rabbi Yeshua is the day of Geula, you see. And Klal Yisrael feels both. And that is why, in many ways, why Klal Yisrael goes to these two people. One is to Rochel Imenu, because she is the one that's part of the Geula of Klal Yisrael. And they go to Rab Shimon, you see, who's also part of the Geula. It's amazing when you think about that. That's what Lag BaOmer is really all about, you see. And as a result of that they both gave their lives for Klal Yisrael, they're both zoicha to be simonim, to be signs of the Geula itself, you see. And I find it interesting that, I learned that so many years ago. I think the amount of people that used to go there is like 100,000 people. Now it's up to 500,000 people. There's something happening. It's almost like Klal Yisrael somehow feels that there are certain things happening, and that means that we are imminent, very near the actual Geula itself. And for anybody who takes a look at current events, what is happening today is beyond belief. Anyway, there's a whole shiur about that. But anyway, what is happening on a daily basis, you cannot believe things that never happened before. Clearly we're very close to the whole concept of the Mashiach and so on, But in any case, this is the significance of Lag BaOmer. It's really a day of Geula, of redemption, because it is a day, Rab Shimon dies on that day because he was masakin, he rectified a tremendous defect, and that is that he brought Kabbalah, which is the Orishan in its surface level, he brought it to the world through the sefer called the Zohar, you see. And really, that's what we do when we come together. And what do we do? Why do they light bonfires? They don't do that anybody else's yortzeit. I mean, you light a candle, a yortzeit candle, right? You don't have this massive fire, because that's the or. That's the Orishan. You see, that or symbolizes the whole concept of Lag BaOmer. That's why they do bonfires. You see? Anybody ever thought why they do bonfires? I mean, it's an interesting idea, but what does that have to do with Lag BaOmer? Because Rab Shimon was all about or, and that's why they light the bonfires. You see, again, the minhag is based on the whole concept of what the day really is, and in many ways, that's what we have to think about. We don't like BaOmer, and that's why the sphera, the bows and arrows, That's why the sphere is Hoid Shebahoid, majesty of majesty, you see? Because in many ways, that's what the Orishan is. It's the majestic view of the whole spiritual universe. And in many ways, that's what Reb Shimon did. And bows and arrows? Well, the bows and arrows is the opposite of is like the rainbow, So it means that just like the rainbow we don't need the rainbow anymore to protect us. You see, so they play around with bows and arrows. We're not afraid to play around with the bows and arrows. Just be careful. Don't aim them at somebody. But in any case, so we now have an understanding of the whole concept of Yud Ches Iyar, which of course is like BaOmer, and we have even more. We have the whole concept of Yud Aleph Cheshvan, which is Roch Limenu. And now you understand another idea. There is no Yom Tov in Cheshvan. That's why we say Mar Cheshvan. There's no holiday of any sort, whether it be a holiday, fast day. There's nothing. There's no day of kedusha. Why? Because Cheshvan in the end of time will be the greatest Yom Tov of all, because that's the Mashiach. The Messianic era probably will begin with Cheshvan, and therefore everybody will celebrate Cheshvan. You see, so therefore right now it doesn't have any real. It has no Yom Tov, and that's why it's called Mar Cheshvan. But ultimately speaking, it will be the greatest of all the months of the year. In any case, we now have an understanding of like BaOmer, what it really means, and in many ways what to think about of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. The Shiur was Leilu Nishmat Rafael ben David, Shlomo Chayon's uncle, sponsored the Shiur. Khalifa ben Shimon and Sultana bat Israel are my grandparents. Abish ben Yaakov, your grandfather, and obviously Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai himself,
Yes.
and all the Tanaim of his time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Kessin.